Welcome to Not Silent podcast when we give the voice to stories that refuse to be forgotten. I'm honored today to have as a guest Malebogo Molefhe, a story that will share with all of you. And it's an amazing story that gives strength and hope to all other women. A rising star, basketball star from Botswana, until one day changed everything. She got shot 8 times, but she decided to live, tell her story, and be the voice of voiceless. Welcome, Malabogo. Can
Thank
we?
you for having me, Arbana.
I would like to start our conversation about you before the attack that happened on you. Who was Malebogo before 2009?
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me again. Malebogo was a passionate young woman, full of life, very outgoing, and was navigating between work and basketball. I was a sports enthusiastic. I still am to this day. I was raised by my graciously caring grandmother within a steady homestead with my uncles and aunties in the brightest of lights in the city center in Gaborone, which is the capital city of Botswana. Yes.
What role did basketball play in your life and your identity at the time?
I want to believe that at the time I was very young, like I say, and very vibrant. I basketball influenced me in a very big way. As one of the biggest female athletes, it built unwavering strength. I was able to have the ability to reshape my life, not just my life, but my journey as I was forging forward as a younger girl. Um, at the time, I realized that the more than anything, it disciplined me to stay grounded because obviously, as a young person, you are influenced by many things in the streets. Like, for example, younger girls were running with alcohol and drug abuse, which and becoming delinquent. But for me, I spent a lot of my time at the basketball courts and engaging more on my physical strength and achieving a better position in the basketball field. I was also a power forward, which means that it was a position that compels you to have strength, not only inner strength, but physical strength to understand how to propel the ball, to protect your environment in the sporting field. So that was just the identity that I wanted to grow, being known as one of the biggest basketball players in Botswana.
So your dreams were related to basketball, your strength, your future on your mind was related to that career.
Yes, absolutely.
What
Yeah.
happened? You met this guy and you fell in love. While you were playing basketball, both of you, can you share a little bit of how this relationship started?
Um, this relationship started when I was still a very young girl. Then I was still very naive, very gullible, and obviously very trusting. Um, I was too trusting just to say the least. My love was too apparent. It was love at first sight. I mean, just like any other normal relationship, we fell head over heels with one another. And um, at that time, I didn't even understand what that exactly meant when you are attached to an individual, another person like that. So gradually, he started to show signs of abuse. But like I say, I was still very young and I didn't understand what abuse meant. I didn't understand what what it meant when someone says that you are being violated. So what happened was each time when he would, you know, talk to me in a harsh way, or bit me or slap me on the face, I will cry and he will ask for forgiveness and I will forgive him because I didn't truly understand. The only thing that I knew was that I was in love with this individual. But as a naive young girl, I just opened myself and my vulnerabilities to him.
Is it because this becomes a normality in the society when you hear other stories? When you hear that this is a norm, that your partner, your boyfriend can hit you, but still you're in love and you don't have awareness of speaking up or reporting him or telling your family. What prevented you from sharing this, or at least with your family, with your mother?
I think majority of the time, as young people, we often think that when you are in love, the one common thing and that we often exert is to want to protect the person that you are with. You don't want your parents to know that this person has got another ugly face or character, and you don't want them to doubt your association with that person. So, in essence, you fight to protect them. That's exactly where I was at. I thought that if I told my parents about it, that they will judge him and they will make me leave him. Or if I told or shared with my friends, they will laugh at me and it will be humiliating. So, the one thing that I did, which obviously opened me to a can of abuse, was to literally keep it to myself and think that I could handle it, when in essence I was young and I didn't know what it all meant in the broader aspect of life.
How old were you?
At the time, when I met the guy, I was 17 years old. So at that time, you do not know really or understand the concept of love. You just want to be with this person. And even when they're abusive to you, you do not have the courage to call them out. You do not want in any way to taint their name. You just want people to think that this is a couple that is in love, and you show that faith to the public, which is not true.
Can you take us back to the day of the attack that happened?
Um, well, in a nutshell, I'd say that obviously because the relationship had grown tumultuous and therefore we had broken irretrievably. I had not seen him in 5 to 6 months between that phase. And he kept calling back because when once someone abuses you, they keep coming back trying to apologize because this is what they're used to. They will leave you for some time, but when they want to come back, they come back with an aggression. So, which meant in the 5, 6 months, 7 months that I hadn't spoken or seen him, he kept trying to communicate, and I had grown a backbone and I did not want to speak to him any longer. So I guess he became desperate and he wanted to pressure to talk to me. Sometimes he will insult me over the phone and I will ignore him. But I just I just kept distance and I moved houses so that he would not come to my house. But eventually, I believe he found out where I lived, and then he came unannounced on that fateful night. Um, I was sleeping. It was in the middle of the night. I was awoken by a loud bang on the window, which caught me off my reverie. The first thought was that I thought I was being attacked by thieves, but only heard a familiar voice calling from outside. Then it dawned on me that this was the person, my ex, that I had feared and had kept running to avoid. And, when the window broke, I thought that I was being attacked and I screamed at the top of my voice. But then I heard a familiar voice calling out to me saying, "Please open up. I just want to talk to you." And then I said to him, what are you doing here? And how do you know where I live? And this is when he said, please, I just want to talk. He sounded very desperate. And I didn't know what to do at the time because I was scared. And I called out to him and I said, please let me call someone so that they can come and help us sort out this issue because I'm afraid of you. And then he said, okay, go ahead and call. At that time, we were looking at each other, but across the window. And then suddenly he called me to a halt of horror when he put up the gun in a display motion and said, open up, I'm going to shoot you. Right then, his face changed to that of a monster. And I immediately fell where I was to the ground because I was shocked. I got the shock of my life. I had never seen a real gun in my life, and the sight of it was shuddering. He immediately went around the house, shot at the door a couple of times until he kicked the door, and he menacingly was able to forcefully gain entry. That is when it all happened. It happened so fast. It was just like in the movies. I mean, he picked me up from the ground this one moment and instructed me to get dressed because when it happened, I was naked and I was in my bed sleeping in the wee hours of the morning. And I wasn't expecting that there would be that havoc. Um, in confusion, he instructed me quickly do this, do that, as he led me outside the house to God knows where. And I followed blindly the whole time. He had the gun pinned on the side of my head. You know, I could feel that cold metal pinning painfully, and I was just so afraid. I said to him, please do not hurt me. And he said, no, I won't shoot you, as he led me outside the house. And this is when it happened. When he tried to open the gate, I guess my neighbors had heard the commotion and they had called the police. That's when he immediately pulled me back inside the yard and he just, put the gun right here and he released the trigger. I want to think that I was fortunate because somehow the gun jammed, and as he tried to fix it to appropriation, that is when I tried to flee. I had not fled any further when I had a hot substance piercing through my back, and that's when I fell down to the ground, and he came over me and shot a couple of times until he was sure that the deed was done. And I heard a loud bang, and I realized that he had shot himself and he fell right beside me and obviously had committed suicide. I lay there bleeding profusely and trying in every ounce lurking inside of me to scream for help. But I tried. Immediately, the police came and they tried to resuscitate me because they could see that there was some bit of movement and that I was alive. They searched. It's a man and a woman, and the woman is alive. And that's when they immediately picked me from the ground, loaded me in their vehicle, and took me to the hospital.
You woke up in different body. You were paralyzed. Uh, what was your first thought when you realized you cannot walk again and all your dreams of a successful rising star basketball player were vanished?
Yeah. You know, that fateful moment made a mark, an indelible impression. I was horrified. I had been shot a total of 8 times, and I woke up in hospital in a state of bewilderment. I was distraught with fear and confusion, and I was obviously overcome by enormous pain. I was damaged emotionally, physically, and mentally. Then, when you're in that state, you do not understand the impact at first that have affected due to the latter. Um, Let me just say in a nutshell that I was a wreck, a completely devastating wreck without full knowledge of what lied ahead. My life was at stake. My injuries were immeasurable. I was traumatized. I had visions of this person lying there in a pool of blood. I had visions of myself lying there, struggling to breathe. It was just too much for me. I, the most painful thing was just seeing my family in that moment. Also being the only child to my parents, they were grief-stricken, and it was just a moment of crippling sadness. I heard incurred because of the shooting. It was so intense that I suffered fractures on both my ribs. I had a bullet that went from my neck to and cracked to the other side of my rib cage, which damaged both parts of my ribs and um, causing an extensive amount of damage. And this was the most affected that wholesomely placed me in that state where I was between life and death. And the doctors immediately told my parents that I may not be able to survive the ordeal because of how extensive it was, that I may acquire pneumonia, develop pressure sores, and eventually die. And thirdly, at that time, like I say, I did not understand clearly what all that would result in. It was inevitably the beginning of a horrible new journey that I had to travel, or that I was going to travel. Yeah. Sorry about that.
You had to recover mentally and trying physically to survive.
Yes.
How was that journey? And you lost the job because you had to recover.
Yeah, um, on the days that followed, I actually was first awash with regrets because I kept asking myself, how could someone who apparently loved me try to take my life? And I also blamed myself. I asked myself, how could I have failed to see the red flags? But the red flags were there. But as young as I was, I could not process it, that it could amount to anything bigger than what it was. That potentially, when someone beats you or someone um, harasses you or is follows you around and harasses you, would actually hurt you to such extremities. And I wondered why I was able to take all of it, why I kept taking it and forgiving it for so long. I thought that my life would would not amount to anything. Um, because surviving the attack was one of the most difficult and long-lasting experiences of my life. I had to fight for bare survival. It was a painful time of my life, filled with misery, pain, and and anger. Yeah.
Uh, was there a moment when you said, I have a voice and I need to use it?
Yes, absolutely. Um, I I wanted, despite what I was going through in that moment, I was then went into a journey of self-discovery. I wanted to be an example. I wanted other young girls to learn from my experience because I had lost so much. I had lost the ability to play my favorite sport. I had lost my job. I was now lost the strength of my body. I was in a wheelchair, and the reality of it was damning. It was not something that I was prepared to 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 accept. And I wanted to come out and show other people, to voice out my experiences so they can learn from me that you shouldn't stay in an abusive situation, which can ultimately cause you harm or even worse, lose lives. Because I consider myself to be one of the lucky girls because so many people have died at the hands of their perpetrators because they failed to report it and they failed. So I wanted to raise awareness so that other people can learn from this experience that when you see the red flags, please report as quick as you can. Please talk to your parents or let someone know that you are in that situation so that you can protect yourself and prevent a situation of this nature.
Let's go back. You were in the hospital, almost survived. You are in the bed
Yes.
regime. You had to struggle with pain and mentally. What were you thinking at that moment? How, because it takes a lot of strength to decide and from the totally different reality to start something new, a mission, because you have a mission to help other
Yeah.
women and girls. When was the moment you said, yes, I am in wheelchair now, but I'm gonna fight and it's gonna be a long journey?
It wasn't easy, honestly, Abanya. It was just recovering from that state of mind and accepting that this is your reality. And also putting up the courage to speak to other people also took strength to actually go about it. So, as I was lying at home, listening to the radio and news about so much violence that I had now clearly opened my eyes to. And because at first I was oblivious of the damage that it was doing, consuming people's lives in our communities. And then I then heard the realization that I needed to come out and and prioritize this and put it before me, whether it was difficult or not. I started building courage, obviously through the support of my family, friends, and those that were just within my community. I started small. I went to the radio and started talking about my experiences, as hard as and painful as it was in the initial stages. I would cry and, you know, feel my pain enough that it will challenge them, it will change their circumstances, and that they will not want to
not be
be
able to
in a
speak, but I'll
wheelchair. They
keep
will not
doing
want
it
to see
because I
themselves
wanted someone to.
6 feet underground. They would not want to bury their child. They would not want to live a life of misery, regret, and humiliation. So I went out. It wasn't an easy task. So I started speaking, reaching out in communities, volunteering my time when I hear that there'll be an event somewhere, and squeeze that so that I speak about gender-based violence and its implications. In Botswana, these kind of um, uh, horrendous activities are usually referred to as passion killings. So there are very many in Botswana that are taking, consuming the lives of young women. So I wanted them to learn from my circumstances so that they can be different, that there was going to be a difference. So I started doing all of this until I was being invited to speak to um, people in the police force, speak to ministers, address counselors, address people who are important in the communities who would listen to what changes were needed for young women and girls, as well as persons with disabilities. And then I was then obviously invited to high legal um, events where I would speak to the judiciary, law enforcement, to ministers, and ultimately to presidents, to a point where I elevated and became symbolic that I profiled myself as a self-taught advocate or activist, if you may. Yeah.
Did you face pushback? Did people try to silence you during this journey?
I do not necessarily think that I would use the words try to silence me, but in essence, what happens was that I was affected by being called condescending names or condescending words. There are words in our culture that are used to demean someone when they're having a disability or when they have been affected by violence. And one thing that I want to make clear to you is that gender-based violence is rife in Botswana, and the statistics predict so. So there were I then realized that there were many um, studies which were conducted then by the Ministry of Gender Affairs, which depict high numbers of intimate partner violence. And it proved beyond doubt that there was an underlying factor between intimate partner relationship would needed to be dealt with both at personal and community level. And as a survivor, knowing the hurt and fully aware of the impact of violence was so difficult for me to just let it slide. And I realized that even despite the advocacy, there there's a tremendous surge of violence in my community. So I did not deter, even despite the social media outlash that was ongoing, because Botswana obviously is centered around patriarchy. There are traditional norms and practices that are believed that men are superior to women, which are practiced in Botswana. And those also exacerbate the level of violence that women and girls continue to experience. So this is why we just have to keep advocating and putting our heads in the block to share and to motivate other people to come out from the shadows and talk about the implications of violence.
You mentioned patriarchal society, how family raise boys. They are always more than a woman, more than a girl. And those girls, since in their family, are raised to accept violence, to accept that their brothers are more than they are. So, are
Mhm.
also women to be blamed the way they raise their own kids, their own boys, to become violent towards their wives, girlfriend, their also their sisters?
Yes, yes, I'd say absolutely, Abana. I mean, we are not blameless as women. We are not, we are not blameless. We are not, we also have a role to play and we also contribute to the outcomes of our societal um, imagination. I mean, we are the ones who raise these boys. It's incumbent upon us to shape their future in such a way that we teach them about respect for for humans in general, whether male or female, that these boys should learn how to respect young girls, should be fearful, and should be accommodating, because in many times we allow our children to act anyhow and to behave anyhow, and we do not show them that we do not condone that behavior, which ultimately erupts into something which is bigger. So it's entirely important for us as women to keep guard of our children's behaviors and to ensure that we mold them when they're younger to be respectful and to show well, to express solitude and to understand the issue of humility, how important it is to extend to other people.
I mentioned because it starts in family. That girl that accepts her boyfriend to beat her up, probably she's been beaten up by her father and her brother. So it's a norm in
Yes.
society. I have a question. If someone has courage to report that person to police or other institutions, do they have support, institutional support after? Because sometimes there are many reasons when they cannot have family support, like their parents say you should accept it's your husband, where you're gonna go. It's economic also. If they divorce, the where they're gonna live. So there are many factors that make women to accept violence.
Yes.
Do they have institutional support?
There is a lack of institutional support, obviously, because we are reliant in, especially in our rural communities, we are reliant on government to provide certain services. And women are marginalized in my country because, especially in rural areas, because there are lack of policies that are targeted to advance women, and majority of women are not working in rural areas, which means in essence that they rely on their husbands or boyfriends, and even when the situation is volatile, they still have that force to stay because they can't go back home because maybe at their homes they do not have support,
Yeah.
or they come from very disadvantaged backgrounds where they do not want to return. So they live in this relationship thinking, same as myself, that it will get better. So there are so many cases where women find themselves disadvantaged, and it's also very important that government comes up with interventions that are targeted to assist women who are fragile. Of course, we do have in Botswana centers, but there are not many. Like, for instance, the whole country, as big as this one, has about maybe two or three centers that protect survivors of violence. It is not adequate. There still has to be something that has to be done to show support and to protect the lives of young women and girls.
What is more common of the girls and women when you talk to them? What is that they fear the most to escape from the violence?
It's very tricky because it differs from person to person. But what I see in most of the women that I have interacted with is that they do not want to speak out. It's somewhat a taboo in Botswana to talk about being violated. So, like I say, patriarchy has a bigger role to play in this because when these women, during marriage time, they are being counseled to be strong, not to divulge their home issues to other people outside of the home, which means that they want to keep the secrets within themselves and their husbands or the boyfriends. So I don't know, mostly they're afraid to be judged. They're afraid um to be um to be mocked by their peers. So for us, it is very difficult. Like for now, it is very difficult to have a woman come out and speak out about gender-based violence. We have many survivors in Botswana, but many are not coming out to say, this has happened to me. So the more these issues are held under carpet and they're not exposed, they keep reoccurring and they come out in the worst way ever possible.
And then all this is passed to their daughters. It's passed generation by generation. You have received an award of International Woman of Courage in the United States. What does that mean for you to be recognized at such a high level?
Well, that I am proud of myself. I mean, coming back from a background where I knew nothing about violence and coming out from a background of abuse where I didn't think I'll amount to anything. And, you know, being in a country where people are seldomly recognized for what the achievements or the contribution in society, I felt validated. I felt like I I amounted to something enough that I I was fortunate to work with the Embassy of America in Botswana. They recognized my worth. They used me in their conferences. I volunteered a lot and they saw the work that I was doing in the community and they were able to submit my name and I was fortunate to be called out and to be awarded the most prestigious award of all. You know, as a rookie, as a starter, I didn't think at the time when I was awarded is when it was in 2017, and I was fairly new in the environment, and I didn't really know much about what that what that meant. But it was big because when I returned from America, I was then recognized even in Botswana and by other countries across the world. And I've been to Switzerland. I've worked with big organizations like WHO. I've also the World Health Organization. I've worked with country. I worked. I had just traveled to countries such as Thailand, Sweden. It's been amazing. I think that it all was for something, and it is still going to be for something. But the award is recognize women who, in the face of adversity, were able to come out and say, I will put my head on the block and speak out, whether it is cherished or not, whether people take it or not, but with the hope that the message will resonate and that it will bring hope to those who are in a situation of hopelessness.
When I received this award in 2015, and I've met other women from all across the world, for our audience, just to explain, so every year United States of America chooses 10 women from all across the world to award them
Yeah.
with the Courage Award. What I have realized, and I know for sure you too, is that no matter where we come from, we all share same problems, but we are together in this. We need support of each other, and what's most important, we are not alone. And it gives you
Absolutely.
strength to continue in our mission and journey.
Yes, 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 absolutely. I think it's amazing what the International of Women of Understanding is doing to recognize the greatness in the face of adversity, to recognize that wherever women are in the world, their voices are important and they need to be heard and they need to be sh- some light need to be shown on them for the work that they're doing. It is equally imperative and very, very commendable that they have awarded us and they continue to do it for other women. And this also helps us or enables us to forge forward and have the courage to say, if I can be awarded like this, then I really need to do something to bring change in my community. Yeah.
Malebogo, your story is not just about survival. It's about the quiet power of choosing life, even when your body is broken and your spirit is bruised. You survived something that you would never think you're gonna live. As you said, even doctors were surprised. but you turned all this into light for others still lost in the darkness. We have to speak up because the silence protects no one. But stories like yours can save lives. Thank you so much for everything you're doing and for the hope that you are giving to other women and girls across the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you so, so much, Arbana. I hope and wish you the very best in what you continue to do, and that people across the world will have a chance to view these interviews and that it will bring hope in their lives. Thank you very much.